Okay, everyone, please welcome back to the stage, Paige, Michael, and Lauryn.
How's it going? How was lunch? Good. All right. I'm excited to do this. These two really don't need a formal introduction, but for the sake of formalities, I'd love for you guys to both introduce yourselves and give us one random fact that we maybe don't know from listening to 700 episodes of the Skinny Confidential Him and Her.
There's nothing left. There's nothing.
You can go first.
You know, I realized I didn't introduce myself the last time. So for those of you that maybe don't know, my name is Michael Bostic. I'm the founder and CEO of Dear Media. Thank you again for coming out here. I co-host a show with my wife, Lauryn, called The Skinny Confidential Him and Her, which was kind of the antithesis of this whole thing. Yeah, so
It's a random fact.
Oh, random fact. So I get asked, for whatever reason, a decent amount about my hair. And I think for the first time, I'm going to let everybody know that for the last 30 years, I've been wearing this wig, and I've had it glued on every day.
Tell them the secret to it that you will never share because you don't want people to buy it.
No, there's no secret to it.
It's Redken paste.
I said Redken. I should own stock in Redken paste.
Redken paste.
Who owns Redken paste? Whoever. L'Oreal, is that them?
There is so much Redken paste, and it's not the best consistency, if you know what I mean, all over my bathroom.
Maybe I'm going to do my own thing. Who knows? We got to find an alternative. So yeah, that's my random fact. I got another one. I think people see maybe Lauryn and I, and they see the podcast, and they don't realize that the podcast is actually both of our side hustles, and it takes up maybe 1/10 of my overall time. The rest of the time is spent, working with Paige and the wonderful people at Dear Media running that business, and working with other founders and investing in other businesses. So yeah, maybe that's not known as much.
Hi, I'm Lauryn, Michael's wife. I am the founder of The Skinny Confidential and the co-host of the Him and Her show. A random fact about me is I really, really, really love being alone. I think that it's real. I think that people think because I speak on a mic that in my private life, I love being quiet and I love being introspective. And I even had to think about a random fact, and I think people don't realize how much I value my privacy. It's really important to me, and if I don't have it, I'm not fun. Let's put it that way.
Wait, let's stay on that for a minute. So, alone and privacy, how many minutes a day? Because we know you love to get granular and specific. How many minutes a day do you need to yourself to really be alone, to bring your best self to everything that you do?
I break it up, so it's not like I had this guy come on the podcast, Jesse Itzler. He's married to the founder of Spanx, who obviously crushed it, Sarah Blakely. And he said that he knew this billionaire, and the billionaire's advice to him of how to build such a big company is that he spent 3 hours throughout the day doing something for himself that wasn't work. And I live by that. Like I even if it's a half an hour here or an hour here, and I consider that going to the gym by myself, like that's an hour, whether it's meditating for 30 minutes or taking a walk or reading, I just really value space so I can think. I can't hear myself think if I don't have that space. And I think that's very Gemini. Like I love being on stage. Put me on stage any day, but I also love to be quiet. So I don't know, it's throughout the day pockets, but it's probably collectively like 3 hours a day.
Michael, do you follow that?
Well, I think Lauryn, I was thinking about this. We're both very comfortable at this point being front facing, but I don't think people realize that we're really kind of actually private people. We value our time together. We value time with our children. I'm very introvert in a lot of ways. If you put me in a room for a week with a few books, I'm fine. When I get stressed, I like to go in and be with myself. Sometimes people like to be around other people.
Are you taking my random fact?
No, I'm not. Am I taking your fact? But anyway, the point is...
He's
like,
rebranding it.
I think that it's important to take time to be alone, because we live in a world where you scroll, and there's so much content and so many different people and so much noise that a lot of times people just don't have the ability to sit with their own thoughts comfortably and really reflect and kind of analyze what they really want, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about up here today.
And I think the takeaway for the audience is if you feel frazzled, it's most likely because you're not giving yourself enough time and space to hear yourself think. If you're constantly scrolling TikTok and you're constantly distracting yourself and you're on the phone, gossiping with your friends, or you're in the car and you're listening to content and you're constantly inundated all day long, you can't hear yourself think. And what I've realized, especially as I've gotten older, it's like the intuition in me doesn't come out unless I have space. And that really means being purposeful and strategic with how you get that space. So I actually carve out space within my calendar. Like, it will just be block. Don't book this. I go to the foot spa. If you guys listen to the podcast, I fucking love the foot spa. It's like, I'll go there and it is like just space to think and write and do email, like whatever I want, but it's space. And I think if you feel really overwhelmed and you feel inundated with content, you should really try to carve that thinking time out into your calendar.
My sister and I were actually talking about this last night. We're sharing a room here this weekend. So the
low budget, Dear Media.
It's a great 2-bedroom. We're great. But we were talking about just that idea of time and space, and that we are all doing a million things every day. We are running and operating businesses. We are managing people. We are running households with children and people and spouses, and we're daughters and sons and friends and this to a million. Like, we have a million titles. And when you actually stop and give yourself the space to think, a lot happens.
It's incredible, and it's so underrated what happens. And I think we are living in a world that is so full of distraction. And how can you even think when you see 7 million pieces of content every single day? Like, you really have to take that step back. And for me, what I do is, this if you follow along on Instagram story, I bookend my day. It's like no phone in the morning. I don't need to wake up and be living someone else's life in the morning. Like, I want to wake up and live my own life. I want to be in my own space. I don't want to be consuming content the second I wake up. And at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's like, I want to wind down. I want to regulate my nervous system. And I think when you start monitoring where you're spending your time, there's a lot of ways to get creative to have that space, especially as a mother. It's so important for you to be able to show up, to be 100% yourself and the best version of yourself, to have your own space.
Totally. And I want to come back to the mother piece. I don't listen to every episode of The Skinny Confidential, shocker. But there was an episode, Michael called me one day and he said, we just spoke to Rob Dyrdek. And I think that this was one of the best episodes we've ever done.
Wild. That's such a good one.
So I obviously listened. We're 700 episodes in, but I listened. And Rob Dyrdek spoke about this database that he's been building, and that he tracks every minute of his day. And he tags it of when he's filming, when he's taking his kids to school. Every minute is tracked and tagged so that he can audit his time. And I know on the podcast and on social and every channel, you guys talk about your time. But really, how do you tag your time, and what does that value system look like?
We have a weekly newsletter that we do now where we kind of give tips. And I did a little small blurb about this week, but I feel like I'll give more context here. So I actually, at this point in my life, associate an hourly rate to my time. And I don't tell people what that hourly rate is, but over the years, it's risen and gotten higher and higher. And the reason I do that is I think people are very frivolous with their time. You waste a lot of it because you just think it's endless. You think you just have all this time in the world, and in many cases you don't. So I put an hourly rate to my time that is a high rate that I feel like if I was going to go for a job, or if someone was going to hire me, or if somebody was going to bring me on to consult, that I would charge that.
I'm going to implement this in the bedroom. I love this.
Yeah. And so what I do is, if anything falls below the threshold of what I deem that value of that time to be, I will outsource it. I haven't been to a grocery store personally in years. I'll use a service to do that. And I don't say that from a place of privilege. I say it from a sense I know my time elsewhere is better allocated, maybe running Dear Media or doing the podcast or spending time with my children or whatever, or spending time with my wife, whatever it may be. If I'm sitting around and I'm scrolling social media, I'm saying, okay, I can do that, but just know that this is what this is costing me in terms of time. And so the reason I do the practice is I think it's a way for me to trigger in my mind, okay, what is this, how much time am I wasting, and potentially what is the cost of that time? And you could do this at any level. I've done it for a while now, any stage of your career. But the point being is, if I'm not willing to pay that price hourly, and I'll give you an example, I'm always willing to pay the price for my kids or for my wife, or if it's time to be with good friends, or it's time to be with my family or my dad, whatever it may be. But I'm unwilling to pay that price if it's a waste of time or something that falls behind that threshold. And you get in this space where everybody's constantly saying yes to so many things because they're not thoughtful about the time it costs them or the fee that would cost them to do that. So that's how I think about it. And if it makes sense and it fits within that hourly rate and it's productive, great. And if it doesn't, then I'm either thinking how do I not do it, outsource it, or do something else.
I think that you guys don't need to be worried about the competition. You need to be worried about the distractions. That's what's going to get you. If you're distracted all day long and you're using your time to be distracted, to look at other people's things, that's what's the enemy. It's not competition. It's not using your time to execute and allocate your energy towards something productive. So I think about my time every single minute of the day. I mean, it's all day, my time is mapped out, but that doesn't mean that I'm booked all day. In fact, I tell Katie over there, Katie knows this, I say, the most successful people actually have a lot of space on their calendar, which we already talked about. But the point is my calendar is very thought out, and there's a lot of reasons why I do things, and everything is surrounded with time. I think time is a commodity. What's more valuable than time? So the way I look at it is I plan how I wake up. It doesn't always go as planned. I have kids. And I plan throughout my day, and then I plan my night. And I like to do it on Sunday so I can have a fresh, nice week. And I have this thing where it's if I don't want to do it right now, today, right this second, then I say no. And that has gotten more crazy as I've grown up. I think when I was 21, I was probably going to a lot more birthday parties. But if I don't want to do it right this minute, I'm not going to commit. And that's really helped me sort of how to maneuver with it. And then I also think what's worth being away from my kids. There's a lot of opportunities that I've turned down because it's not worth being away from my kids. It has to be really worth it. And I think if you look through all of your time and you do what Rob Dyrdek did, who's probably going to be a billionaire this year, he is a psycho about the way he thinks about it. And I think it's a really important conversation.
So you talked a lot about the calendar and the space on the calendar. What do some of those buckets look like for you throughout the day?
My advice is if you're just starting out or you're a micro influencer, I think it's really productive to theme your days. So for me, I don't want a lot on Monday. I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I don't like how everyone's so reactive on Monday. I know people are going to be reactive. So instead I'm proactive where I have a free day on Monday. So I know that when I wake up on Monday at 9 a.m., I'm going to have about 100 text messages from the team. And so I need to be in a mode where I'm able to answer those. So Monday is a very clear day for me. My workout is always scheduled. My trainer, Bodies by Brent, is right there. It's in the calendar. I have someone to hold me accountable. You don't have to have a trainer. I used to walk with a friend. Have someone that you have an appointment on the calendar every single day to move your body. And then I'll do Tuesdays and Wednesdays are podcast days. I have a call day where it's all calls. I'll literally sometimes do 40 calls in a day. But it's so nice because on the days that I'm not doing calls, it's like free. I don't have to hop in and out of Zooms and calls and be on screen. It's like, I don't understand where we get to this place where there's Zooms Monday through Friday all day long. How is anyone supposed to be creative? Like, it's wild to me. So I theme the day, and sometimes I'm like, I can't talk to you this week. It'll have to be next week. Like, I'm very thoughtful with that. And then Friday is more of an open day for me because I love wellness, and I want to do things to support what I'm doing. And I think that's how an athlete looks at their craft too. It's like you have to do the things to support what you want to do. So it's thoughtful. And then the weekends for me, I try to keep pretty open. I don't want to pack my weekends. I'm not someone that's a big event person unless it's Dear Media in real life.
Thank you for being here.
It was hard.
Thank you for taking the time.
I love
she
being
had
here.
no choice.
I love doing stuff when it has to do with the community, but I'm not someone who wants to go out with friends 3 nights in a row.
Yeah, well,
it's just not my personality.
Well, I look at it. I'll answer it in a different way. I think about priorities like big buckets, right? And actually how to prioritize. Which again, if you think about time, a lot of people just kind of struggle with actually prioritizing. And I'll just give you a theme because I don't want to speak to anyone's individual profession or what they're trying to accomplish. But I did an episode where I think people sometimes get the priorities backwards. So most people, they, put their business or their career first, and then they put maybe their marriage second, and then, their kids second, and then maybe their marriage third, and then maybe, their mental well-being fourth, and then their physical well-being fifth. And to me, that's completely backwards, and we've gotten in the wrong direction there where, I think if you go the other way and you put your physical health first, and then you take care of your mental health, and then you take care of your marriage, and then you take care of your children, and then last thing is your career, that if you actually go in that order and prioritize that way, it actually makes everything much easier and more efficient. So, Lauryn and I are new parents. If I put my kids first in everything and neglect her, that's going to create an unstable relationship for her and I, and we're going to get to a place where the marriage isn't strong and the kids are going to see that, so it's going to make it harder. Or if I don't take care of my mental well-being or my physical well-being, and then I try to show up and run a business and I'm all over the place and, whacked out of my mind, that's not helping anybody either. So when I think about prioritizing, I will do the things that protect those priorities first. So I won't show up to certain meetings, or I won't take on certain things if I haven't taken care of my mental health, if I haven't gotten a workout in the gym, or if I haven't, I won't go with the kids if I haven't made sure my wife and I are in a good place. And I say that because I think we get confused sometimes where you hustle, and it's at the expense of everything else, and then you really just run up against a wall. And for me, it's how do I avoid burnout and be the most efficient with my time and priorities all the time?
And I'm about a hustle. I love a hustle, but you gotta balance it out. And what's the point? If you can't get a workout in, you can't get 10 minutes a day to meditate to yourself. Tony Robbins says you don't have a life. You don't have 10 minutes to yourself. You can't get a workout in 30 minutes. I don't want to live like that. I want to have fluidity and optionality and be able to structure my day the way that I want. And I think everyone in this room is clearly incredibly entrepreneurial. You're all here. And that's what being an entrepreneur, I think, is about, is it's you have the options every day.
Do you feel like your priority list of these 5 things are the same order as Michael's?
Yeah, I do. I think it's the same order. I don't have an edit for once.
It's great. Michael, congrats.
Surprise.
You figured it out. Lauryn, I think going back to priorities, we're both newish moms. We had kids a week or 2 apart. And so we entered this crazy chapter of motherhood and building businesses at the same time. What does mom guilt look like for you when doing all of these things and trying to make time for everything that you want?
It's so hard. Who is a mom? I want to know who's a mom. Yeah, it's really hard. I don't really have a lot of advice. I had someone on the podcast that says that she's building this massive brand, Beauty Bio. And she's like, I lay my head down on the pillow and it's I was a fantastic mother today, or I was a fantastic businesswoman today. And it's not usually both. And I relate to that. It's I kind of look at it like this though. I look at it from a macro perspective. So right now, today, I'm in a sprint. From today until next, probably Saturday, we are in a sprint. We have about 16 podcasts next week. We have a billion calls. We're running around. It's a sprint. So what I do, and Katie's here, is I say the week after that, I want complete freedom to do whatever I want to do with my kids. If I want to go take Towns to tumble at 10 o'clock, I'm going to do it. If I want to go work out at the gym with Brent at 1 o'clock, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to pick my kids up from school, I'm going to do the bake sale, the whatever, the snacks, all the things, I'm going to do it. But the week before is like, okay, it's a sprint. It's time to go. It's time to put on like my bootstraps and just do it. And I've realized, like, looking back on my career over the last 13 years, I've done that the whole career. It's like there's moments and seasons and times where you push it and then you step off, and you push it and then you step off. I think we've gotten to a place, and I talk about this a lot because I think it's an important conversation, where the art of absence is lost. It's like, it's okay to be absent. Like, it's okay to take your foot off the gas and go show up and be a really great mother you can be a great mother always, but like really, really be present and take a beat. And then it's okay to be present too. I just think there needs to be sort of like a balance, and it's a dance. And if you look at it from a big overview perspective, again, going back to the calendar, it's really helpful so you know when to sort of stop and go. That's helped me with mom guilt, but honestly, I'm not going to sit here and say I have this figured out. I am not perfect as this at all, and I have mom guilt every single day. I have mom guilt for being here right now. I mean, I do.
It. Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It just is what it is. I don't really know the answer.
I mean, I think it's taking it day by day and figuring out. Yeah, it's just the priorities and everything is constantly moving. I think that the name of this panel was "You Can't Have It All," and as Michael and Lauryn and I were getting ready for this and talking about it, it's the word balance doesn't exist. It's like you are all in on one area of your life at a time. I think about this every day when I show up to the office of like, I'm not there checking my kids' Nanit and seeing if they're having a good nap. I have someone at home who I am lucky enough to trust and who I know is taking care of my children so that I can show up to my job and to Dear Media and do everything that I need to do in that moment. And then I go home and I'm obsessed with the schedule and what time they're going to sleep and the routine and the whole thing. But everything has its own little bucket.
I think also, like, you have to ask yourself, like, I would not be as happy as I am without what I do. And so that component, it's like, I feel like I'm a better mother because I'm able to have the autonomy to beat to my own drum.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that, our life today, after doing this for almost 2 decades, is much different than the early days. So I want to be like very clear that early days, talk about balance, there was absolutely zero balance. Like, I was running 2 other businesses, driving up with Lauryn at 10 o'clock at night to LA to go record, made no money anywhere near the audio space. Driving back, doing that. Same with her. Like, there's no children, there's no social life. It was just like go, go, go. And I think that there's seasons for that. I think if you're starting and you're early on in the process and you don't have as much help and you don't have as much resource, like, that's the time to say you're going to be completely out of whack on the social side, and your love life's probably also going to be tough and all these things. But sometimes that has to happen. Or if you're starting on your fitness journey, you might want to triple down on that space before the other stuff and make sure that you're getting to the right place where you feel like you're making some results or getting some results. And so, like, this idea about balance, I think is a funny idea because it's impossible to be in balance all the time, right? Well, we're doing this right now and we're not with our children. Obviously, I can't say I'm being a 10 out of 10 dad right now, but at the same time, I can say, okay, I'm doing something that is fulfilling, that I hope will be an example to my children that they can look at later in life. So, you can justify it that way. But there's no sense of like, I'm in balance all the time. You have to kind of pick and choose. And the whole point of, not being able to have it all is, I think that's a lie people are told. It's like, you can have it all and as much as you want. And that's just not true. Like, I firmly believe that I could be much further along in my business and career if I went further in that direction and spent less time on the other stuff. But for me, it's like, how much is enough? I want to have more time with my kids and time with my wife and time to be social. And so I'm going to make a sacrifice and maybe not push the business side as far as I could. And I look at some people sometimes that we all admire for, maybe they have a great business or they have a great platform. And the way I kind of think about it in my mind is like, okay, but at what other expenses? And so I think like getting really clear with yourself and being self-aware enough to know like what's enough for you. Like my formula is not going to work for you. Lauren's formula is not going to work. Everyone's got an individual thing to fill their buckets. But the idea that you can have everything all the time is just not true.
I mean, for me, I can share a little bit more in terms of I have a closer seat or view into your time and your life outside of Dear Media. And Michael and I will be on a phone call. I'm in LA, he's in Austin, and I can hear him pulling up to his house and saying, hey, Paige, I actually have to go. I'm about to walk in to be with my kids. Or Lauryn and I just got back from a week-long trip in New York, and I'm taking Monday so I can basically get back into it and be with my kids. And it's so admirable, but I think it's so important to realize that those are cognizant decisions that you're making where you're prioritizing your family ahead of everything else.
Well, we can't have the dad from Jingle All the Way. Like, that
great movie though.
No, the dad from Jingle All the Way, go watch it. I tell Michael, I'm like, do you want to come in the house like the dad from Jingle All the Way? The dad from Jingle All the Way was on his phone right when he walked in. He was dismissive to his kids.
Is this audience like too young for this?
I don't even know what Jingle All the Way
Go watch
is.
Jingle.
Does anyone know?
Liar with Jim Carrey, where he's too distracted with work and he can't show up 100%. And also like prioritize, compartmentalize. Like it's when it's time to be done with work, show up the best version of whatever you're doing.
Yeah, but I told her today, she was chirping at me for something, and I said, listen, like I'm really not very available to you today. I was like, I got a lot. Like, no, honestly, I said I got to focus on what's going on here, a lot going on, and like.
How did that go over?
You?
I don't know. I mean, like I don't know how it went over. It's probably not great, but I just kind of jetted out. 2 separate cars.
2 cars. It's the way to go.
Separate, yeah, we're separate.
2 separate cars, 2 separate bathrooms too.
What advice do you have for people in this room in general of figuring out the priorities and how it's not about having it all, but it's having enough?
I think you guys are all amazing that you're here. I think even if you haven't done one step towards anything, I think being here is a huge step because you're surrounded by like-minded individuals and you can make connections here and everyone's like on the same frequency of, on a path to success. I think that what I'm seeing a lot of is forever students. You don't want to be here in, no offense, 5 years. You want to be executing, so you're on stage. And people will use being a student as an excuse not to execute. So what I would challenge everyone here is like, how are you going to take what you've learned here and actually implement it into your life so you can either be on stage or maybe you want to be behind the camera or maybe you want to be designing the booth, whatever it is. It's like you don't always want to be learning. Like you can always be, I'm always learning, but I'm also always executing. It has to be simultaneously or else you're just a forever student. I think that conversation is important too.
You're evolving with it.
I think the big thing is you have to decide who your competition is. And when I say that, like a lot of people like start to think about, okay, who could be my competition? Like my competition is me. And I don't say that arrogant. I mean, like my only goal in life is to be better than what I was yesterday. I admire so many people that I look out and see doing so many amazing things. I'm like, that is so admirable. But if I ever find myself comparing myself to any of those people, I immediately hardwire and say, okay, that doesn't make sense because the things they want in their life and their career with their family cannot be what I want personally for my life and it's impossible. We're all unique. So, you can maybe see somebody on a platform like Lauryn and I have like, oh man, like some of those elements of that life looks great, but you may actually look at it for yourself and say, that really doesn't make sense to do some of the things they do, or I actually wouldn't want to have that. And so again, like I think you should admire many people and look at it as that admiration to be inspired by what people are doing, but really like You should only be competing to make yourself a better version of who you were yesterday. And I think about that all the time. And I think when you think about that, you're able to kind of like really dig down and figure out what actually makes sense for you, and what, in going back to self-awareness, what you actually want out of life, because you don't have the outside noise of comparing it to what everybody else in your circle or what you see on social is doing. You just don't think about it. You're just like, admire and then think about how you can improve yourself. And in that is the answer to what you actually want. Because again, you may see somebody that you think you want that life, but then you start to go down the rabbit hole and you start to think about the expenses that some of those choices come with. You're like, that maybe is not right for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. I want to be conscious of time, and I'm sure everyone has a lot of questions here for Michael and Lauryn. So we're going to get a round of Q&A going. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. All right, there's in the red vest. Straight back.
Hi guys, huge fan. Been watching you for a long time.
Thank you.
You talk about priorities and being aligned with values, priorities around physical health and then mental health. If you're in a partnership where you feel like your values are aligned, and I think more importantly, like the effort and putting in the work on all those things, if you feel like your partner's just not showing the effort and the follow through, even though you know they have the value, how do you encourage them and motivate them?
The only thing you can do is lead by example with a little bit of manipulation. I love like a subtle puppeteering, you know? Like I just went to the gym for the hour, pass the ketchup. I ride and die by this. I love a little bit of putting it where I want to put it, but like it's so subtle. I think that
it's honestly not subtle at all.
Like the other day, there was an eyebrow hair that was literally so long, and I was like, "You're gonna poke my eye out." That maybe wasn't subtle, but I love like just showing up. I'll give you an example. Brent, when I hired Brent, it was just me for 3 months, and I don't know what you were doing. What were you doing?
I don't know. Just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So I was coming home and being like, I feel so great from my workout, like, you know, like getting theatrical. And after 3 months, it was his decision.
But here's the thing. I would say,
to come work out with me, it was.
I would say Lauryn and I are both, you know, individually motivated, which I think you need, right? You can only change somebody so much. I think leading by example is always the answer. But at some point, like, if the person is not taking that, you know, example and saying, I want to follow that, then you just have to make a decision if the values are really as aligned as you think they are. And I don't say that to make judgment. I know that her and I work well as a couple because we push each other to try and be the best versions of ourselves. And we kind of both rise to that challenge in different areas. But at the same time, like I spend very little time trying to change her individually and vice versa. We just kind of do our thing, and then hopefully, you know, each of us kind of share the same value and end goals.
But I will say, just to your particular question, if you are questioning a lot of things about a partner, I personally would tell you as a friend not to settle. And that's my honest opinion. For me, I'd rather be alone than with someone that's not getting their shit together. Like, you can't drag someone along. You know what I mean? So I think that it's like a nuanced question. It's different. I would definitely take some friends to like a cocktail hour and get everyone drunk and get everyone's real opinion.
Well, there's also a difference between when you need to be subtle and when you need to be direct.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, she hasn't learned that yet.
All right, who's next? Up front here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Shania from Toronto. What are some tools in your toolkit to enhance your self-efficacy and self-perception?
Ooh, that's a good question. Like my self-worth?
Self-efficacy is like the act of...
Yeah, can you get the thesaurus or the dictionary out? What does that mean?
So self-efficacy is the act in your inner dialogue of...
It's a great question.
of essentially reaffirming who you are and who you want to be, which is based on the framework of self-esteem.
Smart. You should start a podcast. I think about this all the time. So I am obsessed right now specifically with monitoring my thoughts. Like I like to step out when I'm in a thought process, stepping out and being like, wait, what is negative here? What is not serving me here? What is at a low vibration here? What do I need to tweak with what I'm thinking? Because I am a huge believer of the way you think dictates your future. It's like, if you're constantly telling yourself, I'm bad at that, I can't do that, that's going to come out over time. And I'll give you a personal example. I was in the midst of losing 60 pounds. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. And I look back at my thoughts when I was losing 60 pounds in the beginning, and it was completely different from the end. So at first I was like, oh my God, I'm 60 pounds overweight. I need to lose weight. This is so miserable. Like, it was just negative. And then I stopped, I would say probably like 3 months into that, and started monitoring the way I was talking to myself. And I completely ripped it away and threw it away and changed it. I was like, I'm working out. I feel slender. I feel lean. I feel good. And I completely edited the way I started talking to myself. And that's when I started to change. And I think it's because, like, if you're constantly just telling yourself how much you suck, how you can't, it's really, it comes out, it seeps through. So I think that what you just asked, self-efficacy, love the word.
I don't think you said it right.
Is pay attention to the way you think when you're making your bed. Pay attention to the way you think when you're driving. Pay attention to your thoughts, because they're dictating your future.
I'm not going to add so much of that, other than, like, if and I said this all the time, if you're not your biggest cheerleader, like, how can you expect anyone else to be that for you? So to echo everything Lauren said, I fully agree. And I just think being able to talk to yourself in a kind way, but also, like, I'm the shit. Like, I got it going on. I got out of the shower.
Tell them the way you talk to yourself.
I mean, I sound like a full psychopath the way I talk to myself, but I got out of the shower
You
the
said
other day.
something out loud the other day. I was like, did you mean to think that?
No, I got out of the shower the other day. I was looking good. The light was at a top angle. It came down. I was like,
He's like, damn, I look good.
Yeah, but
Wow.
You sometimes got to speak things
Yeah.
into existence, and you got to say things to yourself,
you.
because nobody else is going to do it for you. And if you don't believe it yourself, and I know this sounds very like rah, but if you don't believe it yourself, you can't expect other people to believe it either.
All right. We probably have time for one or two more. Perfect. I'm back there.
My husband also loves himself so much, so very much understand that. But as a relationship and as a couple, where did you guys think you would be 5-10 years ago? And how did that actually happen? Are you still working on it?
Michael and I talk obsessively about, where we want to be. I think that these are really important conversations that people should be having with their partners, just to make sure you're setting expectations and you're on the same page. So where we are right now is where we talked about 5 years ago. And I think that all that requires is a pen and a paper and a notes app. We write down where we want to be in 6 months, where we want to be in 2 years, where we want to be in 3 years. And we sort of align it together. And we get very, very micro with it. A lot of celebrities talk about this. Jim Carrey talks about this all the time. It's not just how much money you want to make. It's how do you want to live? Do you want to live in a serene place? Do you want to live in a city? It's very, very, very detailed. How many kids do you want to have? I'm even I'd love a golden retriever in a year. So I wrote that down. I get so, I even know the name of the golden retriever.
You're going to have dog
I know
hair
the
all over
color.
your
I want a Christmas colored, collar, because it's really pretty against the gold. I'm detailed. So I think this is a simple thing anyone can do for free.
There's some things that I just but I don't have I'm not gonna have a say. Like, I don't want the dog, we're probably gonna get the dog. You know, that's just how it's gonna be. But no, I think like anything else, and I'll give you a counterexample. Yes, Lauryn and I talk about all the time what we want out of life, what our values are, where we want to be. I always give the example on the podcast, like say you want to start an ice cream shop and you want to do it as a couple, or you want to do it as a business with a business partner. And one of your ideas is like, I want to build the best local ice cream shop in town. And the other person's idea is, I want to build this and turn it into a franchise all over the world. Well, it's the same initial idea, but where you want to take it is two different things, and that can become really dicey, especially in a business. So we're constantly saying like, okay, how far do you want to push it? Where do you want to take it? What's like, what level?
And when is enough? And when is it time? Like, when do you want to, like, when do you want to have more private? Like, you got to just really talk about what you want the life to look like, I think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times couples think they're on the same page because they're like, oh, we want to go and like do this thing, and they share this big vague idea, but they don't get granular and they don't spend the time of like what that actually looks like, and how far that actually goes. And so, you know, we have the benefit of talking on a microphone to a lot of people that are smarter than us pretty regularly, and so we get that perspective. But then we spend a lot of time with each other talking about these things and making sure that we're not too far off kilter or too far off what each of us is thinking. Like sometimes like maybe I have some crazy idea and she's like, I wouldn't want that, or vice versa. And I just think like if you're going to be in an intimate long-term relationship with someone, it's really important to really, really hone in on the communication.
Thank you.
All right, I think we are at time. I'm looking for Gillian and Weston to confirm, but the Skinny Confidential product sold out earlier. Someone ran over to the warehouse to grab some rollers, some mouth tape, some caffeinated sunscreen. There's a very limited
I didn't know that.
additional stock here today.
Weston just wants more girls to come to his booth.
I don't know where the team is, but at the end of the day, we have another incredible panel, two actually panels this afternoon. So at the end of the day, there will be more product here on site for purchase. And with that, Michael and Lauryn,
Thank you, guys.
you.
Thank you,
We'll
guys.
come bounce around for a little bit.
Thank you.